just to position you in your thinking, Shona's space is right here next to us, so you would walk through Shona's and into ours, and there's even a peephole. I think there's going to be a peephole in the wall there where you can peep from Shona's into ours and vice versa. So, and we were just really enjoying hearing Shona's idea about having the wall painted up to about here to represent the earth. And one of the ideas that Lisa and I have been playing around with, and Lisa will maybe tell a bit further on, is having a projection coming down from the ceiling which has a hemisphere suspended there with a projector going onto it, and to give you the sense of standing underwater within a seagrass bed. So you're actually immersed in the seagrass bed, looking up through the canopy of the leaves. So it's a very similar theme to what Shona's thinking, and we didn't even compare themes as we were evolving our ideas here. I'll just tell you a little bit before I hand over to Lisa about what our subject is, and our subject is seagrass. And as a marine biologist, I've worked on seagrass for many years in Pittwater, right off where we were at Curralong and Mackerel Beach and other places, Palm Beach, but also other places around the world. And the sort of science I do is the biological understanding we need to conserve marine biodiversity. That's what drives me and my science. So, and seagrass is a very important ecosystem in Pittwater. Its biodiversity is very different to what you find in other parts of the seabed that are unvegetated. It protects the shoreline. It sequesters carbon dioxide from the water, which enters from the atmosphere, and in fact its sequestering ability is much greater than terrestrial vegetation. So even though its area totally around the globe is much less than terrestrial vegetation, the amount of carbon dioxide that it can sequester is about the same as terrestrial vegetation. So scientifically it's incredibly interesting, and it's really important for us in terms of the way we interact with the environment and the way we need to look after it. I might just reflect on our collaboration. Lisa and I have worked on projects before. I've worked with Lisa on some exhibitions she's organised before, but this is actually the first time that we've collaborated together on a project together to produce a work of art together. And it's been a big journey for both of us. And I think at times our identity has swapped over from who's the artist, who's the scientist, who's thinking in what ways. And to me that's a really good example of a collaboration. And as a scientist, I'm really interested in the creative process because it really underpins breakthroughs in science. It's a flash of creativity. It's not just mechanical or incremental growths in knowledge. It's those creative bursts that lead to breakthroughs in understanding. And I'm really interested in that whole creative process in the way we do it in science and the way it's done in art as well. And for me, it's been a journey in understanding how Lisa thinks about the world, and I call her my great disruptor. Lisa will come in with an idea that I didn't even think about before, suddenly I'm going off that direction, which is really a great way to collaborate with someone. And as scientists, we're used to collaborating. We often work in groups of scientists together on a problem because sometimes you just need a lot of brain power or hands to do some of the work we need to do. But it's the first time I've worked very closely with an artist like this, so it's a very different sort of collaboration for me, and hugely rewarding and enjoyable.
Okay, well, I'm trained as an artist, but I've been working with scientists pretty much since 2003 when I went to the Antarctic, which was an amazing, life-changing experience. And the sort of conversations that I've observed that scientists have with each other are disruptive. A lot of very hard questions are asked at some of those meetings. Have you thought of this? Look at it from this perspective. And more you're getting scientists from different fields of scientists to come in and listen to each other and ask questions that, as a marine biologist, perhaps you wouldn't have thought of. with an astrophysicist or a neuroscientist in your midst. So I think it's a logical progression to have more artists in your midst. So my training was in, basically it started with dance, and I've always drawn, and so animation was the sort of a logical obsession that I developed over my life. I was obsessed with Walt Disney. In those old films you might have seen of him creating his first animations, he would have he'd go to the zoo and look at real hippopotamuses, or they'd bring in a classical ballerina and they'd draw from life. I mean, this was ages ago, they don't do that anymore. So drawing from life and drawing living things has always been really important to me. And since becoming aware in Antarctica of the microorganisms that really are the basis of all life, make our life possible, I started to look at live specimens under microscopes in petri dishes and so on. And these are some of the drawings that I've made. That's a live specimen that I drew at UTS under a microscope. And this is another one from a sort of a preserved slide, and that's a diatom navicular, or boat-shaped diatom, which is similar to the one, Gary, that we were looking at. So there are lots of crossovers happening that I see. So I guess my approach, and this is getting it close to what we're, how we're working now, rather than having a specific research question, like, I don't know, it's maybe different from science. And I've heard this with some of the artists talking today. You have materials, and you start playing with things and seeing what's possible, and then you're in the world and you're fascinated by something, and with the passions for moving or making or working with particular materials, then you make some kind of connection. And I describe it as a conversation that we have with the environment, and I know that's a word you've used, Shona. It's a conversation that we have with the natural world, and depending on our backgrounds and I suppose our methods that we use, we also have a conversation with those materials. So we have conversations with seeds and leaves and so on and so forth. So I'm now having a conversation with scientists, and that's been really difficult to figure out how that might work, because the thinking is so very different. So I don't want to go on and on about this, but going to the Antarctic, I had to continue those conversations, and it's very difficult to get access to scientists. So I took the ridiculous step of doing a PhD, really so that I could continue my conversations with scientists. I was able to just knock on their doors and break into their labs, and it was really, you try the official way and it really didn't work. So I seriously went in literally the back entrances of science labs all over the place, just so that I could talk to scientists. You go to the front desk and they'll say, oh no, you haven't got an appointment, or who are you? And sorry, but you're very difficult people to get hold of.
She is very disruptive.
You should see my diary, I'm not difficult to get hold of.
But I think it's so important that we do speak meaningfully, like we've been able to do in this program. It's just so unusual, and we're so lucky. So, would you like to describe after my muddled introduction?
I just one other thing. One thing that I know motivates Lisa and really underpins everything I do in this and other things is really being true to the science, because it is a collaboration between art and science, and between an artist and a scientist. So we've been very careful, not so much careful, but we've been, and I know this drives Lisa as well, the things we depict and we want to share really represent our scientific understanding. And that's what informs our conversations, but also the artworks that we'll produce here. And I've got and if you're interested, I've got a collection of those, what we call our scientific artifacts, which is the products we produce as scientists, which is some of the information that I use as a scientist that I've assimilated over many years and is now up here, and drives my conversations with Lisa, and the sort of drives our thinking about what we want to represent And in the installation here, it's all about representing different aspects of a seagrass ecosystem and the interaction of people with it. And also bringing home the point that these are important but fragile ecosystems. And we'll do that by a series of video installations, made objects that Lisa has made here and created here that these are representations of some of those diatoms, which are the planktonic organisms that are part of the water that floats through and above the seagrass, and are critical in the photosynthetic food web. So we want to represent that in many different ways, via paintings, projected videos, by projecting a video that represents 24 hours in the life of a bed of seagrass, going right through from the day, right through the night, projected onto the main window here, so that will be visible to people both inside and outside the gallery. And the other idea we have is that one that I mentioned before about having a hemisphere suspended above the space here, and with a data projector above it that will be projecting some underwater video that I'll take, which will give the simulation of being embedded or part of a seagrass bed. But below that will be a space that is meant to be symbolic of the fragility of these ecosystems, where we'll ask or invite people to walk through it in a circular pattern, but on a narrow pathway where you have to take care to walk through it, and either side of it will be some fragile depiction of seagrass, and we haven't quite worked out yet what that might be. I think glass seagrass would do that really well. But neither of us are glass blowers and could manufacture glass seagrass, but I think it would be very symbolic of the whole fragility of a seagrass ecosystem if you had to walk through it, and knowing it was so fragile. And it comes, I think, back to the whole mandala, the circular pattern there.
Yes. One thing I really want to say, it's kind of like the air we breathe. It's something we don't talk about much because we just do it. But have you noticed the way Bill moves? Very fluidly. Like the seagrass. Underwater, I think since you were 8 years old, you've been photographing, and probably even before that you've been underwater. And with my dance background and my just acceptance that moving through things and drawing moving things is just the way I am in the world. And I think that's one of the points of connection that we have. When you describe your experience of being under the water, this is really what we're creating here. We're inviting you into a space, and that's just been, we don't even talk about it.
No.
But we've been underwater together now, and we just know that. And so we're creating this space for you to move through, and we're going to choreograph that together. We're already starting with this, and the lighting is terribly important because we want you to discover things as you do in this underwater world. Nothing's obvious. Would you like to talk a bit more about what some of the things we might discover?
We've like Shona has done with compile the list of 1,000 plant species, we have independently again decided we're going to compile a list of all the seagrass species, not so much the seagrass species, but all the animals and other plants that would live within a seagrass bed, and represent many of those in several different ways, either by forms that would be suspended around the walls, something like this that Lisa has engraved into these Perspex pieces, that would be suspended just off the wall, and we'll invite people to walk through there with a torch and illuminate them by shining the torch on different sides of it. You can get the shadow of the pattern behind it onto the wall. We have 2 display cases that will be in the space that will represent, again, some of these shapes here, and importantly, we also want them to represent the scientific process. So we'll have scientific data there in the form of some of my field journals with my notes. Like I don't know you, but I used to love going through museums and things and exhibitions, seeing the diaries of old explorers. It's an amazing way to look. I think that person wrote in that diary 200 or 300 years ago, and here's their observations. And as scientists, they're really important parts of our observations of the natural world. And that's one way that we can represent the scientific process and the science part of this collaboration.
The labs,
Yes.
and that brings us to what's really precious here. Not only is the seagrass itself precious, as is every natural habitat precious, but we're focusing on seagrass. What is also precious is the scientific method and the methods used by artists of all kinds. So in this space here, we're going to make something that's clearly needing special care to move through, to negotiate your way through. And it's going to represent, I suppose it's a metaphor, for the preciousness of culture that combines the art and science in order to understand the natural world that we depend on.
And one other, I think we'll have to finish, but in one other corner here, we will set up a space where children can come in, that we will work with them both to be scientists working in a seagrass bed and also artists working in a seagrass bed. We'll invite them to collect their own data using the same methods that I would use and I do use in these environments, and Lisa will do artistic works with them.
And it'd be great, I just thought of this now, but having heard what everyone else is doing, I can then in my lab refer to all the myriad ways that artists approach the same place. And that's one of the big ideas, that there is one scientific method, and you might like to define science in terms of posing a question that can be refuted, is that?
Can be refuted, yeah, after gathering evidence.
Yes, so science is a very definite thing and you can define it, but art isn't. You know, we all have our set of beliefs and experiences and we bring all these to bear on understanding an environment. But then if you're a scientist who also has all these experiences and aesthetic qualities, you come up with a scientific question. It must, to be science, my understanding is, you come up with an idea because of all these other things, and then you subject that question to the scientific method to find out if that is in fact the way the world works, as far as we can tell at this point in time.
Yes. Well said.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask you a question? Because of the way you move in sabbatical, are you sequestering a lot of carbon dioxide?
I think we've released quite a bit in the last 7 minutes.